Folks, in the interest of time, I am supposed to kind of fast track this a little bit. The last panel of today is, again, the talk of the town, AI. It's on everyone's mind now. It's on every CTO, every engineering head, every CEO. Forget that, even parents back home are thinking about AI right now. So to talk about that, we've put a very amazing panel for all of you folks. Let me start by introducing the moderator, Chief Technology Officer of Razorpay, Murli Brahmadesam. Can I please have you on stage, sir? And we have, again, marquee names in the panel. Aruna Rajan, co-founder Magasul. Welcome, ma'am. Abhijit Khasnes, CTO, Healthify Me. Somit Srivastava, CTO, Wealthy. Ramyanshu Datta, or often called as Romi, VP of Product, Data Robot. And Navdeep Manaktala, co-founder, Snowbit, President, APJ Coralogics. Thank you so much. Welcome to Razorpay. Looking forward to an amazing session.
Thank you. So, let me start with asking one surprise and one disappointment in AI technology that you have faced in the last 1 year, and then we can go with the trends. Maybe we'll just go around.
One surprise and one disappointment.
Yes.
Right? Okay, two parts of the same story, right? So we introduced this thing called Review a User's Meal. Healthify is a health tracking app, so you track your food on Healthify and it'll give you feedback, right? So we had a simple prompt that said, look at the food that the user has had and share an insight about how they can improve the food. User starts, first time, eats a gulab jamun. The AI is like, bad idea, don't eat gulab jamun. Okay, remove the gulab jamun, right? Tomorrow he's not eating the gulab jamun, and we are like, oh, you eating rice, don't eat rice. Switch to quinoa. Okay, switch to quinoa. Next meal is like, oh, you're having chapati, that has too many carbs, don't eat chapati. Like, the users, our people are like, oh, this thing is never happy, right? Whatever I eat, how much ever, like I try to reduce, there's always a suggestion on top. The lesson that we learned is the prompting needs to be correct, like how much you push. If you just give a simple prompt saying, give a suggestion to improve the food, it'll always try to optimize, right? So you need to have some contextualization, some understanding, saying, look at other things that the user is doing. Maybe he's gone for a run today morning, so it's that gulab jamun is acceptable, right? So that was a surprise. We thought it's a simple thing to do, and we were disappointed in the beginning, but it took us some time and practice to figure out how to rightly nudge the AI system.
You answered just with one, both surprise and disappointment. Surprising disappointment.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go to the next.
Sure. So to give you context, my background is physics. I actually ruined my life by studying physics for a long time. And it turns out that that's the foundation, at least physics people like to believe so, of AI. So I'm surprised that suddenly things that I've studied are cool 40 years after I've studied them. So that suddenly the fact that people like me can make money and can be in demand is surprising. And then I'm disappointed, but in an expected way, because whenever, with due non-heartfelt apologies to the North Americans amongst you, whenever the North Americans are the first to do something, there is like 100x noise and some half-x signal. So I'm very disappointed that AI has a very high ratio of noise to signal, and I'm looking forward to 2025 extracting more signal from that very noisy environment.
Yeah. Just to give everyone context, so we are a platform for independent financial advisors, and we implemented a feature which was smart analytics on top of user data, and that was surprise. Like when we started working on the feature, we didn't give any prompt. Simple that you are imagine you are a wealth advisor, and the results were surprisingly good. And the bad side was that even if the data was little incorrect, it was able to give that answer, which was like, it was always trying to make up things so that it looks accurate. So I think that was biggest thing which we have to work on, tuning the prompts, and what he has done.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think let me start with the disappointment on this one. as per, I think, certain reports like publication by Menlo Ventures, about 80% of the generative AI-based applications still are in a sort of prototyping pilot stage. Moving it into production has been excruciatingly slow. So that has been a disappointment. You would expect things to move faster. A lot of quick, cute prototypes, like, oh yeah, I wrote 3 lines of code and I built this financial service agent and things like that. But things moving into production has taken a lot of time. Surprise has been actually interesting is that a lot of these models, even without being fine-tuned for very specific domains, have actually done a pretty good job with just retrieval augmented generation. This has been a surprise for a lot of folks because they're expecting the advent of fine-tuning models for specific domains or even specific tasks to have happened much earlier. There are other aspects in play, economics and things like that, of fine-tuning the models. But it's been an interesting and pleasant surprise that fine-tuning has not taken off. Less than 9% of the implementations today are actually fine-tuning, whereas RAG or retrieval augmented generation has sufficed for a lot of use cases. Again, still in a fairly prototyping pilot experimentation stage.
Interesting question, Murli. So in terms of surprises, I think that intelligence is more or less commoditized and free today. Expected that to happen in a few years from now, but if you look at foundational models, prices have crashed by 10x every year. If you look at DeepSeek and multiple open source models available, all the weights are open, you can do whatever you want. So essentially intelligence is free today. I expected personally for this to happen maybe 2-3 years down the line, but it's just happened faster than I expected. In terms of disappointment, I think it's just the reluctance more broadly, even within tech teams to adopt AI for productivity. I'll give an example. There was an experiment we ran where we told an internal team that what will it take to build the front end and back end for this particular functionality. And so with the front end alone, they came up with an estimate for 3 people, it'll take 3 weeks to build it out. Our CTO built it in 1 day. He didn't tell them that he'd built it in 1 day. Then he asked them for all the feature functionality that they'd like to see in the roadmap for the next 12 months. So there was a channel running and furiously people were kind of commenting. And he built the next part of it out in 1 day. So 2 days, everything which a team of 3 said they will take 3 weeks to do, plus without taking into account the roadmap, was done. So I just feel there's still a lot of reluctance to adopt AI for productivity purposes.
Do you see similar things in your companies?
From a different aspect, right? So what we are doing is, incident resolution is one of the big challenges for us, right? People have, infra runs into issues all the time. Typically, if this happens off hours, the PagerDuty alert goes off, somebody needs to wake up, freshen up, open their laptop, figure out what's going on, right? And the alert typically starts saying too many 500 errors on this endpoint, or something is not responding. What the DevOps guys did is just built a LLM-driven bot on top, which said, okay, every PagerDuty alert is directly fed into the bot, and it's already also synced with Neuralink, Coralogix, and CloudWatch. So then it typically does what he's supposed to do on an incident response basis, right? So looking through all the CloudWatch alerts, it's like, okay, I realize that these APIs are giving 500. It's going to Coralogix next, saying, okay, tell me all the responses. What's the error message that's coming in? And then it's trying to correlate with the APM logs from Neuralink if it's needed, right? And then by the time he opens his laptop, all this analysis is done for him, right? So all he has to do then is just say, oh, okay, this is just an OpenAI issue. Their server is down right now, so that's why this problem is happening. Close the incident, go back to sleep. So there are pockets where we see that people have managed to automate a lot of drudgery work that they do and move forward. I think it's also probably tied to the incentive. Yeah.
So we, at Razorpay also, we found that when we launched adoption of Copilot, initially around 200 devs adopted it out of 1,000. And then it has taken a lot of push to encourage people to use it. So right now we are around 500 to 600. So there is clearly some reluctance in using the tools, but there is also maybe, we hear that there are multiple tools, not just Copilot. And people are using, directly on their desktop, they are downloading open source LLMs and they are using it. So it's a little bit hard to also track. Not that they're not using the AI technologies, but it's just a little bit hard to track.
Are they also making you code? Are they sending you the roadmap so you code in an hour?
No, he has a
He
very
builds in a
super CTO.
You
So we should
want
just
a
hire him.
CTO to code in an hour? A day, sorry.
My company, I think I see few other developers, they are saying ki my skills are getting loose because I've started using AI, I'm not coding on my own. So I think that's which thing is happening with me.
Okay. Romy, when, from your vantage point, data robots, you guys talk to multiple customers and different market segments and whatnot. What do you see leaders talking about in terms of AI?
Yeah, I think right now, a lot of leaders, especially if you think about the non-technology leaders, the CFOs, or even the technology leaders like CTOs, they're like, how can I start getting ROI? And how can I start getting ROI faster from this technology I'm investing in? And that comes down to like, how can I productize this? It's taking me, every time I take an application, it's taking me anywhere between 8 to 14 months to productize it. And what they look for at this point is end-to-end lifecycle management to accelerate this journey. So the build, the operate, and then the govern of these AI-based applications. To build, you would, to go into details out here a little bit, is you would first need to translate a business problem into what is the AI solution for it, try out different workflows and components quickly, evaluate them, and then build your application. Deployment and operation, equally hard. Find the infrastructure, which itself is pretty hard to get right now. Find a way to auto-scale it, set up the right monitoring, set up the right guardrails, and then govern it by having a single source of truth or a single mechanism to provide permissions for these composite AI systems you're going to have, calling different tools and predictive AI models, and filing compliance reports, staying compliant of different laws in different domains. That is the crossing the chasm they are feeling right now, is that a lot of things are in great application or a great experimentation stage, but they need to do this end-to-end lifecycle management much faster.
So in investment domain, what type of challenges do you have in using AI?
No, I think one of the very big challenges we have, it's about regulation. So we are a SEBI regulated company, so we follow all the guidelines which is set by SEBI. So in terms of security, what we do is we are trying to host a lot of models are self-hosted by us. We're also working with Google on the enterprise solution of Vertex AI because they have a solution in India. So we cannot send the data outside India. And while interfacing also, we have to make sure we don't send things like client's name or his email or phone number, PAN number like that. We just send the raw data and we get some analysis out of it. But those are the challenges because every time we have to keep in mind. But on the hindsight, the team is also sort of getting sensitive about that privacy of data is really important, right? So once we keep talking about whenever you're using AI, a lot of developers are also free to use AI. So they have to keep in mind that they're not sending any proprietary data, which is on the back of their mind, there's already a loop running to make sure that that happens. So I think advantage, we have seen a lot of advantage as compared to what is the challenges right now. Only thing is we have to make sure that things are done in the right way. And all the grounding which is talking about with the base data so that the results are correct.
I've seen that regulators think about explainability, lack of bias and so forth. So when you recommend certain things, how do you make sure those things are taken care of?
Yeah, so we do have a grounding. So a lot of, let's say we have generating 10 sample results. So we send to, let's say we have a human expert also who will validate those results. Like out of 10, 1 or 2 of those are validated. Once only it's validated, then only we show it to the partner. We don't directly send it to the client because since we are into a partner business or distributed business, so there's a partners who will make sure that the advice is correct. So he will do a cross check. But for him, his work is like reduced by 10x. So now Previously, he was serving 50 clients, but now we have a real example of a partner scaling 10x in 1 year just by using the alerts which are coming from AI.
From observability point of view, is there, what type of building blocks are there so that, we can conform to these type of regulations?
So, Murli, what we did was end of 2024, we bought a company called Aporia. Aporia has guardrails for both AI guardrails for both security and observability. What you could do is that you can define specific policies with respect to the output that you'd like to see. For example, if it's confined to a particular domain, to avoid biases and so on and so forth. And in real time, it monitors the output to see that the responses are within those guardrails. Then we also looked for drift, data drift that might happen. We look for hallucinations that might happen. All of that is then kind of checked as part of those guardrails. So this is like a product that you can enforce with any of your custom applications models that you might have developed.
So one point, Aruna, for you. So what I found is LLMs are not that great still with quants. As an example, I found a table in a document, and I asked AI to go and validate a particular column, which is calculating based off values from 2 different columns. And the first thing it said is it's already calculated. So I said, no, you go validate the first row. And it calculated and it was off, but then it justified. The answer was something like, divide 2 numbers, and then it got into 37.5. And it said, okay, now you round it up, it will become 61, so the answer is correct. So from 37.5, it went to 61. So the question of guardrails comes into picture. So how do you think about this?
Sure. Actually, I think stepping back a little bit, the problem with LLMs is that they are marketed as AGI. It's almost like having a smartass who's supposed to be replacing you and replacing everybody around you. And so you expect the world from them, but you don't know exactly what to expect from them. I mean, this happens quite a lot. If you have smartasses at home, your kids, maybe you realize that they know too much, but you don't exactly know what they know. So I think the problem is, when we start using LLMs as, you verify each and everything that's possible out there. And again, because you are coming from this consumer mindset of solve everything for everyone, it becomes very hard when something for someone is not working. How do you go about it? I think that's what's the gap between all the hype you see around LLMs and everybody going crazy, releasing new models versus, like Romi and folks said, no one's actually using it in production or, other than the CTO who's coding every hour. How you have to make Murli code, whoever is in Razorpay every hour. But no, I'm just kidding. But, I think the problem is that once you see an error like that, it's not very clear how do you go and fix it. And a lot of people say you can fine tune, but you're talking about a very, very large trillion parameter model. And when you're even trying to gather, like Murli wanted the table to reconcile to 37, and it's rounded it off to 61. So is it arithmetic rounding errors that it's not understanding, or is it looking at it as justifying the data and explaining it to you? And then the ways people solve it is try to do, prompt chaining, saying that first, can you calculate this value? Is this value different from this value? Would you say so? So. Now people like Anthropic and others are working on how do you break down a given problem into, is the user after the right thing? Do you have to check with the user? And then do I have to verify what the user has input? Can I assume errors in that and stuff like that? So a lot of large companies are looking at developing LLMs in this way so that you don't have artificial guardrails. The problem with guardrails, again, is that if I put in a guardrail that all arithmetic has to work out and it has to follow, anytime you see a number, go to a calculator, then somebody might ask, what's the meaning of life? And I say 42, and you're starting to calculate something, and you completely miss the joke. Like you all have missed it, but that happens, AI first world. So that's the problem. And I think it's mostly a question not of guardrails, but of how do you make sure LLMs work for, let's say, fact checking, And now Google put out this research assistant or deep research where you are supposed to give it, you should try this use case of go read these papers and check out that the papers tally. And I've only seen on Substack, like there are people on Substack who say this is impressive to start with, but really disappointing as it goes with time. And then there are people on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all these noisy places where they're gung-ho about it. They're ready to hire the AI to build their next startup, and they're ready to go conquer the world. So it's very hard, to make out the difference between these, whether it's a question of a guardrail or is it a fundamental change. I think it might be leaning more towards the fundamental change.
How do you see in your domain in terms of health?
So I think health, similar to finance, sensitive data is a key issue to resolve. So wherever we are using LLMs, we make sure that we have agreements where they don't use that data for training. And also we anonymize and remove any identifiers before we send the data to the LLM. So the standard practices around not sharing PII, PHI that becomes identifiable over time with the LLMs is what we do. I just adding on what you were explaining. So we created this thing called AI Quick Fix, right? So you give an image and it'll find all the foods in the image. That's the feature. Then we realized that it doesn't do it well all the times. So we gave a text box to our users saying, okay, if the model failed to find all the foods in this image, you can just type whatever you want to fix in this text box, right? Like there's like a lot of heated arguments inside the company saying, why don't you just give an edit button, a delete button, or add button, and then the AI PM is like, no, just give a text box. People will type, say, replace coffee with tea, and then it'll work. And we're like, okay, let's try it out. And we roll it out for a few people. And now you realize that the moment you give a free form entry, and people know that it's backed by a AI that you've been talking about, people will try to use it in amazing ways that you've not thought of, right? So if the picture is of a coffee and a cake, and then it says coffee and apple pie or pie, right? And then my expectation is the user types replace pie with cake. What is the user typing? Cake. Enter. And now the LLM is supposed to figure out that, oh, you are saying that, oh, the pie is not a pie but a cake, and hence this is what you are saying, right? And then we haven't figured all of this out. And then people are asking customer support questions in that box. People are asking, random questions in that place, right? So I think that's something that we are also learning, that while you can give those options to your consumers, you also need to train them enough or explain them enough of how to use it and what you can do with it. Otherwise, it's a madhouse. Yeah.
In terms of the type of technologies that your team is allowed to use or they are using, what type of guidelines do you give? Let's go around. I think it's an interesting question.
So on dev, we have Cursor. So the backend folks use Cursor. The Apple guys, finally with the latest releases, are on the Xcode with Apple suggestions. And then Android Studio also has Google's code completion module. We see the same split in using the tools. Generally, the more senior guys are not very happy. I'm sorry. But they are like, I know better than what the code complete is saying, so I want it off. Other people, different places, some people are like, oh, it says too many things. I spend too much time deleting things that it is writing instead of actually writing. And, but a bunch of people in the middle are really, really happy, right? Now I can see that productivity is increased, ability to do things faster has increased. And I see that the PMs use ChatGPT a lot more. So documents are much better. Explanations are much easier to understand. I think painful things that people used to do have become a lot more documentable, understandable. So new people can pick up things much more easily.
What about foundational models? What do you guys prefer?
So we use OpenAI, we use GPT, we use Gemini in parallel. Anthropic we have tried for some of the RIA answering, where we believe that the users are a little bit more sensitive about the style of answering that they expect, and that is where we use Anthropic. But otherwise, most of the traffic goes to GPT and some goes to Gemini.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was in Google until last year, so I gave you two different answers, and now I have a startup. So When I was at Google, we used, Google uses all Google tools, and the same, all of code is written with Google Gemini-like model that's supporting code completion. Now I work for myself, which is I work very little actually. I'm waiting for the CTO to come and code everything. So.
I think you have given a bad idea.
Yeah. I'm going to really rag the hell out of that CTO. But I tell you something with code, that's the thing. Very genuinely, it's very impressive as soon as you describe what is the task that you need to do, and it's very fast at generating something. But when you have a very large code base, and you want to check that in, right? So AI, it turns out that AI actually wants to replace your VPs and CTOs of engineering. It has no interest in doing what your SWE1s, SWE2s, your, the QAs, all the hard workers in your company, it has no interest in them. So the problem is that whenever, and I've seen this at hyperscaler companies, and even what we are trying to solve is that when you actually check in code using an AI agent, then you're actually leaving, and many people have published about this, where they've done control studies in enterprises with trying to have developers code with AI agents. Cursor is popular, so I use Cursor for myself, but in a startup, we don't restrict anybody from using whatever they want that I don't have to pay for. So use whatever doesn't cost you anything, or something you're willing to pay for by yourself, or with the limit of $20 a month. And what ends up happening is that there are a lot of downstream bugs and integration issues. I can give you a very simple example of, let's say that your table, let's say you're reading a PDF and you're saying that you've written code that parses that table and does one computation. And now I simply want to change this code to say, and somebody has made this change, right? Like suddenly Murli finds out that his code is not, whatever he's using, say GPT, is not really parsing the table well. And he decides to talk to these folks, and he switches to AWS. And he says, hey, developers, now go and integrate with AWS document intelligence and then do this computation. Now, something as simple as this, when you have an AI agent check in this code, now go and use document intelligence from AWS, breaks the behavior, because there is no implicit understanding right now of an API is just an interface. It can make changes. It can be backward compatible. So let's say document intelligence adapts to suddenly analyze Excel sheets and Google Sheets and not just PDFs. Certain things might break. You might find that your images are getting parsed, but you need a human developer or a human a hard worker to go out there and find out this is what happened. And what do I do? Do I go and use Gemini? Do I do something custom? If I do something custom and they make an upstream change which handles that, then I might be overcorrecting. I might be losing some information. So actually, the problem with coding with AI agents is that you have to catch up a lot. It's like somebody who's littering the place quite a lot and also cleaning the place. And you literally have to, have a broom and chase them and look at how do I clean up after this very fast, very energetic, toddler-like, code checker. So that's pretty much what we do. We say that how can we make AI agents more humble and clean up after themselves, or how can we, being very good Indians, build good cleaners after AI tools? So how do we make sure when all of you are becoming more productive, handling, his team member is handling 10 times more partners, so you don't get 100 times more bugs as a result.
Thank you, Aruna. Let's finish.
Yeah, I think for me the case is different. The senior lot has improved a lot. I mean, they are able to churn out faster, like one day ETA. But what I've seen is the sorry, I'm just same rack. Double meaning.
I have two on my list.
Okay. But, I mean, I've seen with the junior lot, there's a lot of issues when writing the code. They don't understand the code, which we use a lot of Cursor. Everyone uses Cursor in our team. So there's a joke also, right? When I wrote the code, Cursor and I used to understand the code. Now only Cursor knows. So yeah, I mean, the team is free to use anything. We have licenses of Gemini also, and we do have API keys of ChatGPT, which team can use. But other than that, they are free to use. So people do run their own model machines. And
Romy, you should tell how customers are using.
I think customers as well as internally, I was thinking this. Our CTO or distinguished engineer actually writes code. But the funny thing is, she says she doesn't write it, she generates it. She takes very well specified designs, which she can articulate well, sometimes works with the product manager, puts it into this, into Copilot, and she says 95% of the time, she gets code which she can then just say for prototyping, that's great. Okay, will she take that code and put it in production? I'm sure our QA will stop it. But that is a good place to start off, and it helps working with the broader engineering team. The two other areas, I think, for product internally as well as externally, I've seen the writing and rewriting documents. So I was in Amazon till December, and RC is also ex-Amazon. So we're very, very obsessive about documents and every sentence in it. So recently I was just going through an exercise with him where we were acquiring a company and we had to write the press release for that. And I wouldn't say that AI did a very good job writing the entire press release, but when we gave it specific paragraphs and said, rewrite this as per, to highlight these points, but in fewer words, you get very specific with them, it actually does a very good job. In terms of models we used, Anthropic and OpenAI were the popular ones, followed by a little bit of Llama out there. My personal favorite has been one thing is, I'm always I see my calendar triple booked in meetings. Actually, the note transcription thing really, really works well. Because I get a transcript, and then instead of listening to a recording of a meeting for 1 hour, I just say, okay, I look at the transcript and say, can you summarize this transcript? Similarly, I use this a lot for research papers. Upload a research paper and say, can you give me the gist of it? As you would explain to a non-technical product manager or something like that. That's been very helpful. For most customers in that world, I would say about more than half of the applications has been some form of assistance. Okay, it's either a chat assistant for some kind of functionality, inbound or outbound with their customers, or it has been some kind of a code assistant. They are the two areas I've seen picking up a lot of steam out here.
Muli, let me just pivot the discussion a little bit. So we play heavily into security in the security domain. And let me just tell you how we are using security AI to solve for those use cases, also for what customers are asking us for. So if you look at security, one is that we are the aggregation point for data for all kinds of security telemetry. It could be cloud security providers, firewalls, VPN, across the board. So the first part is your creation and curation of your environment. So once the data comes in, keep in mind that most organizations will not have large security teams, and the people who work on the security data typically are not devs. And many of them will be very junior, fresh people who don't have deep insight into that data. So the first thing that we are being asked of is, can you provide us with AI on the platform itself to create queries, to create an alert for me, to create a dashboard for me, to normalize the data for me. So kind of create that whole environment and customize it for whatever I want. And I want multiple layers of interactivity with it, because complex queries, complex alerts, probably the AI will not get it right in the first go. So I should be able to interact with it over a period of time till I get it right. So that's one part of it. The second is the context. So once the data comes in, it's the alerts, dashboard, queries are all created. What does this data mean? So, the data, one is it could be from different data sources. Everybody is not familiar with what different data sources are kind of representing in the data. Second is the context of my environment and how does that play out with that particular data. So again, contextualize this data for me. Tell me what this data means. Tell me what this alert means. Tell me what this log means, for example. Help me in that respect. Second is, can you baseline all of this for my environment? Because one of the big problems in security is alert fatigue. So, and baselining itself is today a manual, continual process which never stops. So can you kind of suggest recommendations for baselining? Basis my context, and then I can obviously give you the authorization to do it, not to do it. That makes my environment far more sensible and useful. And the third one is the correlation. Now you have all my data. It's normalized for my environment. You have the context. Can you correlate all of this and kind of give me an investigation report which is in tune with my environment? Give me the remediation recommendations. The people implementing some of those might not be, again, devs. So tell me what I should go to the console and do. Tell me what I should go to the CLI and do. If I'm going to implement automated remediation, tell me how I can implement all of that. Can you create a playbook for me for you, which I can implement with my automated remediation platforms? So these are the scenarios that we are solving for, and every aspect of it we are trying to solve by infusing some element of AI or another.
Thank you. We'll do a quick round and then open for questions. So what are you looking forward to in terms of AI technology that will improve your domain?
I think larger context understanding. I think so far it's been just what's the size of the context that the model supports, but I think it's much bigger than that. Even today, we use AI in a lot of cut and paste way, right? Like I have a problem in my doc, in my editor, in my code. I copy my problem, take it to ChatGPT, explain everything, get the answer, and then paste it back here. So it's still very disjointed. Hopefully, through the year, we are able to understand the context either inside the tool, so you don't have to do this copy-paste business, or something like a computer user operator, where it is continuously watching what you are doing, so you don't have to give the whole story about what you are trying to do, right? It's watching you, so it knows what you are exactly trying to do, and then maybe you just call for help, and it's like, okay, I know that you are trying to write this email, and then you are now stuck at this paragraph where you do not know how to continue. Let me just kind of complete it from there. I think that integration of context with that intelligence that AI provides is hopefully something that we'll look for. And then what's the implication of that for apps like ours, right? Like how can the AI be ever present when the user is using the app? Can we help the user if he's not able to track food, if he's not able to ask a question properly or not able to do something that he's trying to edit, he's not able to do it? Can we step in at that right time and without the user having to give us the context, guide him through? That's what we are looking forward to.
Aruna.
I think personally, I'm looking forward to solving some significant problem in software engineering. So we have something to sell you when you say that you want something to plug into your code and for your engineers to be able to guide it or for it to be able to guide your engineers. So that would be great for me. But in terms of, and I'm not a magic CTO, so it's going to take a lot of time, but I hope it pans out in 2025. Other than that, my hope from the AI community is that it gets a little less vocal about celebrating too much and becomes more critical about what works, what doesn't work, becomes a little level-headed and tries to look at this as a real opportunity rather than something to compete and keep acing one another and spamming social media with, I built another model or whatever it is, and trying to sound, one problem I have with AGI is if it is really so smart, why do we need so many people talking about it, right? Like, why don't we just have AGI running conferences on AI and explaining itself to everybody? So I feel it's really high time we kind of took a pause and thought about it rightfully, and then as people also try and think about what is really happening and is it going to solve for everything? For example, what we have now is a generative method. It's able to understand language of certain kinds. If you think of code as a language, it's not a magic solve to say, saving yourselves from, insolvency or, finding out the meaning of life or even filing your tax returns, So it's very hard. So, acknowledging that there is more to life than AI, I hope the AI community will come around to contributing there.
Somit?
Yeah, I think from here onwards, I think it's, rightly she said, it's not about model, it's called economies of intelligence. So, our main focus in this year is to start focusing more on the problems. So, and less focus on the model because it already became a commodity right now. And center business around the AI intelligence which we have, how we can solve, because in all the financial business, there's a lot of inefficiencies which are there inherent in the system. Like we have a lot of back office operations where there's a lot of feed files involved. Every day there's thousands of files which are being passed here and there. How we can just make sure simply to check whether those files are correct so that the end user has a faster transaction. So those simple things, I think we can very easily do with AI, ultimately, which leads to overall India can have an advisor as a wealth advisor for India. So that's what we are working on.
Good. Romi?
Yeah, I think I can summarize it almost as like innovations in observability and governance. not just technical, but also coming up with more unified standards across corporations, across countries and communities on governance, what constitutes as fair use of AI, what constitutes as responsible AI. If we can, obviously some of this sounds like a dream that, people will agree on all of these standards, but if we can at least start with a core set, then combined with some of the other problems which I called out around build and deploy, which I think you all also called out, we will start seeing a lot more adoption of these models in real life use cases, real life applications, beyond just sort of prototyping and piloting and things like that. So I think for me, it's both something I'm looking forward to, and if you ask me if it's my wish list, I think having some kinds of standardized observability and governance metrics and agreed upon compliance aspects would be a great thing.
Thank you. Abhijit.
Two things. One is that, we play in the observability and security space. There's a lot of data that people bring into us or don't bring into us, which is very important for us to understand the full context of, to provide meaningful insight into what both on the observability and security side. Now the challenge is that all of that data is not being ingested. All of that data is not even understood by organizations which bring in that data. And all of that data is not always clean and in the required format to kind of bring that in. So we're looking to solve that. That will be a big takeaway for 2025. The second one is that can we kind of compress productivity? The release cycles, for example. Today, major release cycles, for example, for us is 2 to 3 weeks. Can we bring it down to 1/10 of that? Have a major release cycle every day. I think that will help us to experiment and innovate a lot more and bring out things much faster.
Okay, thank you. Let's open up for questions.
Hello, hi. My name is Pankaj. I'm working as a product manager at an HR tech startup here. And my question is directed towards every one of the gentlemen and Aruna ma'am. I wanted to ask that you guys mentioned in your discussion that there is a certain reluctance within the engineering and developer community for adopting these AI tools, be it ChatGPT, be it Gemini Advanced, and Cursor, Bolt, etc. Right? So I wanted to ask, since these products are meant to ease the user's burden and make heighten the productivity, what do you feel is the barrier for these products to not do that? Because these products are meant to change the user behavior, but they are not able to. So in that setting, what would you do to actually solve those things? Maybe an internal tool or building on top of these? I wanted to ask your opinion.
I'll start with I don't know the solution to it, but I'll tell you why the reluctance comes, especially on programmers to adopt this. The programmer community, many of them, they would say okay, if the AI creates code and it creates a mess and someone gets paged at 3 a.m., okay, who's responsible? Is AI responsible? No. In the end, I'll be held to account. So is it reducing my work or is it increasing my work that I'm not writing my own code, I'm actually now taking someone else's code and now figuring out if some things could have been wrong out there. In fact, a lot of the human-in-loop aspects around inspecting code, or as these model builders build their models, is about taking those borderline code things which, say, an Anthropic or an OpenAI or things like that, cannot distinguish between and say that this code actually is probably erroneous, but takes a very advanced developer to say, okay, there is something, this code can fail in these particular kind of conditions. So that is the fundamental reluctance, and I wouldn't say it's unjustified, especially when it comes to corner cases and things like that. The models sometimes might generate code which might fail in some corner cases. As I said, I don't have a solution to that today, but the right solution would be, it could be really, when it could generate for corner cases.
Okay, thank you. Let's take one more question.
Hi, My name is Shrey. I'm leading a set of engineers at the Narayana Group of Education Institutions. My question is simple, that now we are using AI in our life, tech is life, that a lot of output has been driven by AI, right? Previously, the set of repositories at GitHub or GitLab was it still today is private, right? I mean, it's proprietary software built up on based on those private repositories. Now, if I use AI, all those code base would get exposed to the AI servers. How do you see as a security threat? I mean, kind of, do you see all those LLMs, GPT servers, Cursor, Cloud AI, you paste all set of code snippets on that. Easily those servers can able to detect what is a loopholes in your security stuff. I mean, do you see that as a security threat, or do you, how do we, there is some set of differences in my mind that, do you see as a security threat where you are going to expose those code snippets to that, or, because usually we see AI to get the output of that. What can you do better on your code base? Yeah.
You want to take it?
Yeah, I think, one thing which you can do, which you really worry about, that the data leakage, and also it's using enterprise, like ChatGPT Enterprise doesn't train with your data. Or if you have self-hosting solution, so that is a simple way to start with, if you think that is the challenge in terms of security. But I don't think we are anyone, like, I've read a lot of code in my life, still write code every day. I don't think there's anything which is rocket science which we are writing, which is like anybody can steal. Anyone can write the code, right? I believe whatever we have written in 6 years, anyone can write in 6 month period now. So I don't think that's a problem right now. Only thing is, if you are worried about it, use enterprise solutions which actually don't train on your data.
Can you give next question?
Hi.
This is the final question.
It's a very general question, but obviously there's a placebo around when you're using AI, you give entire control to the AI. And now where your position was managerial, where you had to dictate, how the AI is performing or how your subordinate is performing. Now you're giving that control and you don't know what could be better than the output that AI has generated. So automatically for tech startups, the entry to barrier is very low and they can scale faster. Investors are going to push for that. But how do you internally manage the team of developers that, okay, AI is not controlling our code, we are controlling the code that is being prompted in AI?
Abhijit, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a little bit more understanding. If AI is writing the code, then how do you build that internal comfort with your team that it's not the AI in control but the developers? Is that what you're saying?
As I think he mentioned that, Razorpay, I think 500 employees are already using AI.
Right.
But when, I think pre-generative AI, it was on you, your managers, and their managers to validate the code and push it. Now with AI, obviously that bit of control get lost because, now something is being generated and it looks nice. Yeah. So you don't really know whether it's nice or not, but it looks nice.
Yeah, I think it will be driven by how you test things, right? I think while we always had hierarchies and managers, and I don't think anybody above manager cared about the code, but as long as your test cases are watertight, as long as you're testing for all the business functionality that you want in the code and that is passing faithfully, I think you're fine. You know that that code is behaving correctly.
And
every time your agent checks in code, page them 5 times.
Just a lighter question.
Don't deploy on Fridays.
Okay, let's wrap up and then we are going to be around. So you can ask
Just a lighter question I think everyone would relate. Does someone who does Google better would be a better prompt engineer for AI? Someone who does Google better, I think Googling is also a skill, right? Would those people be better prompt engineers? What do you suggest how someone can become a better prompt engineer maybe?
My personal favorite answer is parents are good prompt engineers. If you can deal with a toddler, then you can deal with the LLM.
All right. Thank you all. Thanks for making that.
Thank you so much.